Hey fourth graders, welcome back to another math lesson. This week we're going to be focusing on fractions, and then more specifically we're going to focus on equivalent fractions and comparing fractions. And one of the best, greatest, coolest strategies that we can use when we're dealing with equivalent and comparing fractions is drawing models. Models are going to be our best friend. Really, these rectangle models that I'm going to show you today are going to be really helpful in figuring out equivalent fractions, and when we have to compare them, these models are going to be amazing. So let's get started so I can show you exactly how to draw these models out. So you might have a question that says find a fraction that is equivalent to 2/3. So the way we can do this is by drawing a model to figure this out. And the model is going to be a rectangle. So you're going to make a rectangle, and the rectangle that you make, you're going to cut it in half as best as you can. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. So the reason why we're cutting it in half is that because we want to find an equivalent fraction. So we're going to be working with two fractions. You're going to have 2/3, and then you're trying to figure out a fraction that's equivalent. So I'm going to make 2/3 on my top half of my fraction model. So with thirds, I'm just going to kind of make thirds like this. There's 3 of them, thirds, and I'm shading in 2/3. So that's 2/3. That's step one, drawing out the fraction that you're given. So we were given 2/3, and it's our job to figure out an equivalent fraction to 2/3. So it's another fraction that looks different from 2/3, but it's the same amount. I still want this much, but written as a different fraction. So there's a couple ways you can do it. What I like to do is I bring down my thirds again. So I have thirds again. I'm not going to be using thirds, so I bring it down. And then one thing you can do is that you can double each piece. So if I double this, instead of one piece, now I have 2, one piece, now I have 2, one piece, now I have 2. Interesting. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces, and I want to have the same amount shaded. So I'm just going to shade from where the 2/3 stopped. So I got this, 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 this. So it's still the same amount. And let me see what the fraction would be. So we had 2/3, right? And the fraction here is going to be equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for my denominator, and how many for the numerator? 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, so you went from 2 pieces, you doubled them, you doubled the pieces, so 2 pieces became 4, so it's kind of times 2, and whatever you do to your numerator, you're going to do to your denominator. So you times 2 here, so 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, so you know that's for sure a correct equivalent fraction. So this model here is really helpful. The first step is creating a rectangle, then you cut that rectangle in half, you label your first fraction and you draw it out, and then you start figuring out, oh, what denominator can I use that it's going to provide me a way to figure out the numerator as well. These 3 and 6 are friends, so all we did was double our amount. We doubled the numerator, so we have to double the denominator. So 4, 6, it looks different from 2/3, but it's actually the same amount. So that is one. So this model is going to be your best friend. Let's try another one before you go off and do it on your own. So we want to find a fraction that's equivalent to 1/4. So again, we're going to use the same strategy. I'm going to draw my rectangle, and then my rectangle, I'm going to cut it in half because I'm going to be dealing with 2 fractions. I'm going to have my 1/4, and I'm trying to figure out what's equivalent to 1/4. And the reason why we take one rectangle and cut it in half is because we're comparing, so our fraction models have to be the same size. You see how these 2 pieces are the same size, basically. So that's why we do it like this. So I need 1/4. So the way I deal with fourths is I use what I know first. So this is a half, and then I take my half and I cut each half in half, and that gives me 4 pieces. So 1/4 is my first fraction. And now it's my job to figure out a fraction that's going to be equivalent to 1/4 for the bottom. So again, I can use that same strategy that I just used before, where I'm taking one piece and I can make it into two pieces. So that means I'm bringing down the fourths again. And what I can do then is cut each fourth, oops, make it double. So instead of one piece, now I have 2, 2, 2, 2. So let me see how many pieces I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces. And I want the same amount shaded, so I can't go past this line. I gotta shade this piece and this piece. So it looks like 2 pieces are shaded out of the 8. So again, what happened was this one piece, I made it into 2, so I multiplied by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. And then you gotta do the same thing to the bottom. So 4 times 2 is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, that is a correct equivalent fraction. Again, there are more ways to find equivalent fractions. You don't only have to cut them. You don't only have to times by 2. You could times by any number you really that you want. You just have to make sure whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. But this is just one way. We really are hoping that you use this fraction model to show your work and to show equivalent fractions. So I hope these 2 examples were helpful. Thanks for watching and good luck on your work.